There's so much noise around systems, processes, owner manuals, standard operating procedures, policies, so on and so forth. Admittedly, sure, I'm probably one that creates a lot of that noise, but I know for a lot of the listeners and a lot of the viewers out there, a lot of you are thinking, where do I get started with this stuff? Like, it all sounds rainbows and unicorns and it's amazing having a business that could run without me, but where do you start? In today's podcast, you're going to learn from a guy who is the operating manual guru, Mr. Al Levi. He's been on the show a number of times. He is an amazing business owner, and he is the author of The 7 Power Contractor. Now, guys, I really encourage you to take on board what he's talking about, because in this podcast, we're talking about how you can build owner manuals that can replace you in your business. It's extremely valuable. And to add a bit more value, he's also given you an amazing offer, which you'll be able to get access to through the show notes. So enjoy this podcast, guys. Al has been on the show a number of times. He's by far the most requested back on the show, and we all love him to bits. So enjoy the show, and I look forward to your comments. Today's podcast has been proudly brought to you by Tradie Web Guys. Tradie Web Guys work with tradespeople only on their websites and marketing solutions to help them stand out from their competition. Everything from web design through to SEO, search engine marketing, content creation, you name it, guys. It is a customized solution for trade-based organizations, and it's fantastic. Head across to tradiewebguys.com.au/apply, fill in the form, and let's have a conversation.
Giving tradies and contractors around the globe the tools to run a modern business. You're listening to Toolbox Talks from the Site Shed. Now here's your host, Matt Jones.
Hello, listeners. Welcome back to Toolbox Talks on the Site Shed podcast. My name is Matt Jones, and you are joining me today with the one and only, the infamous, the notorious Mr. Al Levi, the 7 Power Contractor, author of the 7 Power Contractor. Al is a regular guest on the show and is always very well received. Al, welcome back.
Well, thank you for having me back. As I always said, Matt, you know, it's easy to show up once and then they kick you off, but they keep coming back. So that's good. And it's persistent.
So, Al, you've been on the show a number of times. We've spoken about loads of different things, many of them relating to your background, I suppose where you came from as a plumber up in New York. So maybe you want to tell us a little bit about your story quickly for those that are tuning into you for the first time.
Yeah, I was third generation in a plumbing, heating, air conditioning company, and my father and uncle had taken it out of a gas station, and we became heating, and then I moved on to plumbing and air conditioning. And today they do electric. And the good news is there's a fourth generation. My nephew, Michael, is there with my middle brother to this day, and they're still running the company. And it takes systems to be able to pass a company from one place to another. And that's really what we got to be about.
Right. And that is your thing, definitely. I know for any of you guys that haven't read Al's book, I thoroughly encourage you to head over to Amazon and get a hold of that. Or you can actually get it through the website too, can't you, Al?
Yeah, it'll direct you back to Amazon. But yes, come to the website. This way you can opt in and you get some good goodies as well. So either way, Amazon, you can listen to it on audio. You can get an ebook. You can get the old-fashioned paper book and follow what Matt says. Get your highlighter out and highlight it because it's good stuff. And I'm prejudiced.
And you'll see there's plenty of highlighter in this bad boy. That's for sure.
That's right. That's good. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
So, Al, today we are talking about operating manuals, or some of the guys might be familiar with the term standard operating procedures or systems or whatever. It doesn't really matter what you call it at the end of the day. And it's something that I've learned largely through yourself and a number of other people that I've had on the show, is that businesses of any size all typically will at some point or another need to fall back on systems if they have any intention of growing bigger than a one-man band.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to touch on a lot of things here. I know you've got a great program, which you've got a great offer for some of the listeners as well, which is fantastic. And then I know we're going to talk a little bit about, and the listeners there are probably going to be thinking, oh, great, here goes Matt banging on about his organizational structure and stuff again. But I know that through what you've taught me over the years, that definitely is, one of the fundamental stepping stones in making sure that you've got the right systems in the right place for the right people at the right time. So we're looking forward to definitely diving deeper into this podcast and video recording on operating manuals.
Yeah, it's very sexy.
Right.
So try to control yourself out there, fans. I know, and actually Ellen Roy, who's been a guest of yours, would talk about it's like sticking a needle in your eye.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah.
I never wanted to create operating manuals, so that we are really clear. I was great at sales and marketing, and my team was really good at blowing it all up. So that sounds familiar to all of you.
Yeah.
And until I came off the road, and fortunately for me, I read the seminal great book for any contractor, which is The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And it was great because it told me what I needed to do and why I needed to do it. It gave me zero in the way of help, but it was the what and the why, because I couldn't understand why my life was so stressful and why I wasn't getting the success. And I will tell you, I was making money, but it was going to make me dead really early. And you can see I've made it a long time. So I can tell you that it is the path. And you have to make a decision whether you're 20, 30, 40, 50, or even 60. Are you going to get off that, treadmill or that rat race where you just keep working really hard, and at the end of the day, you just don't have anything that really shows? And even if I bring you, so here's the thing I always say is a good example of why you need operating manuals. If I could deliver to you, and I know in Sydney in particular has enormous problems with getting technicians. If I gave you 10 great technicians and they were trained really well, would you hire them? And the answer is yes, if you have the work, right? Now you send them in 10 different directions. What's the chance that they could do a toilet reset your company way if you have never defined it?
Yeah.
I'll help you out again. Zero chance. Are they going to follow the procedures, do the thing? Can they show up neat? Can they, there's a lot of things that we always talk about. For service techs, it's really easy. You have to talk to customers, which is the hardest skill. And good communications leads to good sales. Then it's about operationally neat, clean, leaving the place neat and clean, all of that, keeping your truck neat and clean. And technically, I called you here because the faucet's leaking. And when you leave, I don't want the faucet to be leaking again, because me and my wife fought about who's going to hang out with you today, and we have good paying jobs. Not a good thing. So this is why we needed to come together. An example that I share all the time and why you need manuals. We had 25 techs. And one day we sat down in this process of creating the manuals, and we said, well, if you're doing a great tune-up, list the way you do it. And would you like to guess how many different ways we got, Matt?
I'd say somewhere in the vicinity of 25.
That would be a good answer. Yes. Yeah, because it was not defined.
Yeah.
And that's really where the problem is. And ultimately, who gets crushed in this is your customer. You cannot serve every customer the way they need to be served without the manuals. It's really, this is all important, both the trade, telling a tech, there's a lot of manuals. But where it all starts, I believe, is in the organizational chart. And that's actually with the book. It talks about the boxes it takes to run the company. So I've told the story before with Matt, but it's always a great place to start, which is my brother Marty was the financial guy, and he happened to come in earlier than me. He was there at 6:30 in the morning. And he gets a call from a customer, starts yelling about some service problem, and they had been there before. And he goes over to the service manager and starts to tear into him. And when I arrived late at 6:45 a.m., there's my service manager on the roof about to jump. So I had to kind of walk him back down. By the same token, we were trained, make sure you take care of, your vendors, that they take care of you when the crunch comes down. So we would run to give them their money, which sounds weird, but that's exactly what our approach is. And by the way, it turned out to be a great philosophy that our dad taught us, because when push came to shove and the big Hurricane Sandy here in the United States, we were taken care of above and beyond everybody else, because that's where we had put the money in the bank. Anyway, so I get a phone call and they go, "Hey, Al, I know you may overlook this bill, but can we get some checking?" And I just said, hang up. And I walk over to the accounts payable person and I just tear into this person. And Marty has to walk them off the roof. So finally, Marty and I look at each other, and this is really the tone. So I'm not making this up. They go, Marty, if you don't like something that's going on in the service, you tell me and I will get it straightened out. And Marty looks at me and goes, you don't like the way the bills are getting paid or how the money's getting collected? You tell me and I will get it straightened out. And that is where the org chart came from.
Right.
Because before that, everybody was free to either do it or not do it. And so you either had 2 people or 3 people doing it, or nobody would do it. And so we created this very flat organizational chart that it doesn't have the fancy titles. There's nothing about CIO, CFO, CTO. You can knock yourself out with all the initials. This was really about the boxes it takes to run the company.
And I think
I'm going to put one quick thing in that. I don't care how small a company you are. You're thinking, well, there's just me and my tech and the person in the office. You absolutely need an org chart no matter what size company. And that org chart fits every contracting company. And I've done them all. And the reason I'm stressing this out here is that if you ever want to be more than you are, you have to have this definition. You can never hand off that box that's on the org chart, no matter how many people you have, until you define what the box is and what activities go on in that box at least 80% of the time. And that's where we're talking about today. The best way to do that is operating manual.
And one of the things you've taught me over the years as well, Al, which I have since then taught and spoken about, is you can organize your org chart in different ways, but you can't remove departments from your organizational chart, because you can't just go, oh well, I don't feel like having finance in my org chart. Too bad, buddy. It's in there, like it or not.
Like it or not. You know what? And Ellen teaches us it doesn't count unless we count the money.
Right.
You can do everything right if you don't have the money counted right. And unfortunately, I'm making light of it, but how many contractors? The story is very old about getting ripped off by people that unfortunately, relatives, family, things of that nature, where they get taken advantage. I mean, ultimately, you need to know enough about that. And we as contractors, including yours truly, I hate that stuff. I didn't say I disliked it, did I?
No.
I said I hate it.
We get it.
But I will tell you, you have to know it. And I learned enough about it. And that's what's so great. Ellen has a lot of good tools. If for nothing else, I always talk about her book, Where Did the Money Go? Which is I would put it right up there with Michael Gerber's book,
Wow.
Where Did the Money Go? But in that book, if she didn't write anything more than the glossary of terms that explain the accounting terms, it was worth the reading, because your accounting team and your account is going to BS, universally known. They're going to BS you to death with another term that you'll never know, and you'll crawl off to the corner holding your head. You got to know what these things are. You have to be able to read a P&L, balance sheet, income statement. You don't need to become a financial, we still turn the wrench. Yeah. Well, no, you don't need to know to be a wizard at it, right. Be a tycoon. Do good in the world. Put that money back to work. Yep.
So you effectively, after that conversation with Marty, went on the path to build systems and processes and operating manuals within your company, which led then to you effectively removing yourself from your business. And you thought, well, why don't I teach other companies how to do this, right?
That's pretty much the story. It was back in the 90s we did this. We spent $150,000 in today's money. That's for all of the manuals that we created. And they were about 100, 150 pages. But when you have no pages and nothing, and you don't have an org chart, that is amazing. And we paid it off in 2 years. And the way that we paid it off in 2 years was a decrease in callbacks, or I don't know if you use callbacks term you guys use. Yeah. The callbacks where we were wasting our time going back. We put in a lot of best practices and code requires in the manuals as well, so that we could help the guys know what is a quality thing to be selling and doing and how to do it the right way. We trained them up on what was in the manuals so that they could prove to us they could do the task the way we had defined it. And because of that, they maximized each of the calls. Here's the other big thing. Where does the call start? The answer is when the phone rings. So if your customer service reps aren't trained on like what we have as a manual, they can't possibly do it right. They can't capture the information right. They can't build the sales momentum correctly. They can't create good communications. And I don't care what happens afterwards, but if they didn't do their job on the first part of this leg, if you will, nothing's going to go right. So the customer service representative manual that box is the key box. So I always talk about the triangle of communication. And what that means is the customer service rep, building sales momentum, capturing the right information, getting the information, not going too far, and then turning it over to the dispatcher. And Sydney traffic, as we know, can be a little testing. But windshield time is a big thing. I mean, dispatch, if you have a great dispatcher who's following the dispatcher manual that has priorities, so it's not what you think is a priority, what I think is a priority, what the next guy thinks is a priority. There's one set of priorities, and they're dispatching based on what's in the dispatcher manual. They're going to maximize billable hours because that's the only thing that counts. Maximizing billable hours and getting all the right information out to the technician. So that's the last of this leg. And then the technician needs to know what do they do from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed, other than turn the screwdrivers and turn the wrench. Now you might think, well, the other stuff's so important. I'm not saying no. I'm telling you this. And all of the companies that have paid me a ton of money over these last 17 years to work with them, one-to-one, Matt, we always start with those 3 key manuals because that's what fixes broken companies and takes good companies to great. Starting with that, and these are integrated. So it wasn't like I plucked it off the internet from CSR, Internet Dispatcher, Internet Tech. These are in sync, in concert, so that the momentum builds on itself. That's really the key thing I learned.
So it's the call taker, the technician, and the dispatch person.
Yep. Call taker to dispatcher to tech, and tech back to dispatcher. So that's where they're going up that triangle.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. And how are that correlating to, I mean, obviously different businesses, a lot of the guys listening out there might be more project-based, so they might not have dispatchers.
They have somebody that still has to take a call. They still have to get it to their big ticket salesperson, or they're going to botch that too.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, you still need the CSR manual and you still need those things, even if it's an install company. And I've worked with companies that are just install companies. So it's better to edit than it is to create from scratch.
Yeah, yeah.
Rather than a dispatcher, you basically just call what I call an install coordinator, because they're still in charge of the calendar, right? The dispatch program.
Right.
They've got to put it in there so we're either not underbooked or overbooked. We know what we have in there. So it does apply to all companies. Yes, service particularly.
And it kind of ties into what you were saying as well, where you can dress the different departments however you want, but you just can't remove them.
It would be a nice idea, but a very dangerous idea. No. And the other thing too is because it brings up a good point, when people see that org chart with all the boxes, they freak out. And so the next thing is they go, whoa. I've worked with companies that are 200 or more people, and even they have names in multiple boxes. So first box is that org chart, and then you break up the boxes into what we call a depth chart,
right? Which
means who's first string, second string, third string. I'm going to tell you, your name's going to be in a lot of boxes, and that's normal. Mm-hmm. The fact is, your name is already in the boxes, but once you know what the boxes are, you're in a better position.
Yeah.
Once you define what goes on in those boxes, then you finally can get people on your team or bring people in that can help you. And the number one thing, and I've always talked on these other podcasts with you about staffing, we always talk about the 5 steps: recruiting, hiring, training, recruiting, hiring, orienting, training, and retaining. The orientation process is first, second, and third going through the operating manual that pertains to their box.
Gotcha.
Nothing more important.
And so
by the way, it's not you don't hand in the manual, Matt, and go, here, go home and read this.
No, you train them on it.
You have to do it together.
Right.
And it's all on digital devices, by the way, today. This is not like, oh, it's a printed up manual. There is some virtues, and I talk about this in the program, to paper versus digital when you're training, but my goal is to get rid of paper as soon as you can. This is not about saving a tree, although I believe in that. It's really much more about they only have the most current manual, and it's harder to walk off with your manuals. So no matter which division they have it.
I suppose at the end of the day, the whole idea is you want to make it accessible to the people like your technicians when they need it, right? Like that.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's a really good, well, 2 things to that is you don't want to be out on the call and go, hang on a second, I got to check my manual in the truck. Although I will tell you, years ago, when I first started as a tech, I would tell the customer, I need to get something in my truck, and then I'd be going through the troubleshooting guy like that. So yeah, it is always with you. It was even with you when it was in paper, but now of course it's on your tablet, your devices, whatever you're using. But they need to be familiar enough with it so that it's not like, oh, this is the where do I look this up? They
Right.
already know it. They just need to go back and refresh themselves with it. Here's the big thing to this too, though. Let's talk about benefits. Is who amongst you enjoys talking to people about the same thing over and over and over? You want to know where your life goes? You want to know where your time goes? It goes 5 minutes at a time when they ask you the same questions over and over again. You know, things that they should know. I mean, really, as a tech, how do I get dressed here? Because if you leave it to my opinion, you are not going to like it. Not one bit. Because it's either going to be unbutton my shirt down to my navel, or, you know, top, or shirt in, shirt out. And, you know, there's no standards for it. There's a lot of things that you can do on top of that. We've talked about this before with, you know, get me dressed up right, take a photo of me, and just wait till I show up. The idea about the operating manuals, though, once they're defined in writing and they are objective, then when we've gone through it together and I've trained you on it and you walk in and you're not dressed like this, I'm just going to sit you down and say, open up the tech manual and read on page 7 what it says about how you get dressed here. And they're going to say whatever it is, but I don't let them off. I just have them do. And everybody I've trained on this does exactly the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when you start with the steps of corrective action. But as it extends today, you, my friends, are just going to talk and talk and talk until one day you just go, you're out of here. And now you have a truck in the yard. There isn't anything to, you know, it's just a craziness. And I know it firsthand because I lived it. I would not be preaching this if I hadn't.
That correlates as well. I mean, I know it's something that I'm not on the tools anymore, obviously, but you know, I know a lot of the conversations that I'll have with team are the same things when you're talking about how to, you know, it might be create artwork for a podcast, or it might be how to, you know, upload the audio or edit the audio or whatever it might be. And so, you know, and I don't know if it was you that taught me this, but somebody taught me this years and years ago, you know, anything that you typically have to do more than once, you should create a manual or a process or something on it that you can then document how you do things. That was you? Okay.
That's thumbs up.
Okay.
No, the thumbs up. I'll tell you what really comes down to is if you're going to do it more than once, and here's where the key thing comes with manuals. If it's an 80, in other words, 80% of this is going to happen again, or it's a 20 weird, you can't fill your manuals up with the 20 weird. Even though it's digital, if it's to the ceiling high and I have to try it, you have to remember you got to train people on this long before they need it. So that would be something I would really caution you about. And it really took us a lot of time to learn how to do that. So in the course that we're talking about, I share, it's much more than words on a page or a digital device. I teach you about, you know, what goes in and what stays out, and, you know, how to get the right tone. Because when I tried to write it years ago, it was like a law book, or as my friend told me, the 10 Commandments. And he said, and I was in a New York City union shop. And trust me, that was not going to go over well. And so the course talks about how to edit it the right way, how to keep the tone, because the manual should sound like it's my big brother or sister putting their arm around me and coaching me, not yelling at me. And that's what our memos, you know, the memos that say your mommy doesn't live here, clean up, you're not as big as you are, stand closer to the toilet, you know, all of the goofy stuff that's in every USA shop that I've ever been, including Canada, and that I've been in and seen these things. And, you know, I'm not pushing, look, Richie and I, my brother Richie and I, who were the techs, you know, we used to come in at 2:00 and he'd be ticked off and he goes, can you write a memo? And we do the memo thing. And, you know, finally, if we were really mad, Matt, it was in color and in caps.
Right.
Because we're not kidding.
Like
we put it on a wall. It didn't change anything because it's one-way communication.
Right.
Manuals are anything but that. Manuals is a two-way conversation with us.
Okay.
Now, these are our rules. You get to put some fingerprints on it, but you don't get to hijack it. And that's what I also share as part of the process.
So I'm curious on that. I mean, I know obviously you've taught me this over the years, you know, however, it definitely, I think, worth diving a little bit deeper into that whole mindset around making it conversational and getting buy-in from the team and getting contribution so they value it more. I know you've spoken about it on previous podcasts, but I think I'd like to hear it again.
Yeah, I think, you know, and again, this is not so I had to hire somebody. My good friend Dan Holohan here in the United States, he's a noted writer, and he had to run the meetings. He had to do a lot of things that I just couldn't do it. And but he really taught me about. That's where that CSR dispatcher tech thing came from.
Oh.
He says we're all involved in the call. We have to have them all around the table because each one affects each other.
Mm-hmm.
When I get to the call, and you as a customer service rep who answered the call, they ask you how much you think it's going to cost, and the CSR go, I don't know. It could be $50 or $200. And Matt, when you run the call, what's the only number that person on the phone ever heard? $50.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what you say as a text. So they can sabotage you unless they have been trained right. And that's where that part goes in. So yeah. And the tone, again, I think is really important. So it's not like we're yelling at you. As a matter of fact, I always talk about it as, there's a thing in the USA these days, and I don't know if it's elsewhere, but it's no longer no smoking. It's a smoke-free area, which is the same thing, but it's all supposed to be in positive.
Right.
And that's really, it's save your don'ts and your nots. It's kind of what Matt with a young child will understand this in a short period of time is that baby's not going to hear. If you just spend all day, no, and stop, pull their hand, they're not going to pay attention. So you got to be very judicious as to where you do it. And tone is really, really important.
Mm.
But in the rollouts, there's a whole thing about if you have a big shop, there's a mini rollout, just like anything. You can't get 20 people to agree to anything. So there's 2 or 3 opinion leaders. They're typically involved in a mini rollout once you have the manuals, and they get to put their fingerprints on it. Again, not hijacking. Mm-hmm. And if you are smart, you will take their feedback.
Right.
Because if you don't, you got a problem. Now, if you hate it or it's wrong, you need to explain that to them so that you do it. But the tone is always, again, the big brother, big sister, as if they're having a conversation. And the part that I was saying before is I don't care if you're a 1-person shop or a 200-person company or bigger than that. When you roll out the manuals as part of that orientation process, you speak it aloud. And it goes to another thing of this, which is because when you're putting the manuals together, if it doesn't roll off your tongue, stop, because it's on to a wrong track. And the other part of this is that because it's not me reading it to them, we're just going to take turns going around the table reading it. The only words that I have learned that you ever listen to are the words that fall out of your mouth. So it's very funny because, when I talk to a crowd, and you've spoken to crowds as well, is I know what I said, but I have no idea what you heard.
Right.
Because everybody's got their own filters in their ears. And it's really, so you have to make sure you covered a lot. And that's why there's some repetition in some of these manuals, so that by the time you go through the manuals, you're already emerging better able to fill the box.
I like as well that, and as leaders, I suppose as business owners, you have to be, I suppose, privy to the fact that the guys out there that are doing the work may very well have a better understanding of how to do something than you sitting in the office, mate.
Oh, that is so good. Yeah, because again, you don't know. And there's also this whole thing. I mean, this goes back to my own days. My tough service manager, who I've spoken to before about Tommy, who had full license to abuse my dad, his sons. Dad said, yeah, go ahead, do what you got to do. And but his point was, one day I was doing service calls on one side. So imagine Sydney, whatever, the worst of the traffic you'd have to go. I was in one spot. I went all the way to the other spot. They got done with that call, and they sent me all the way back. And I came in and I said to Tommy, I said, don't they know, what's going on? This is so many years ago. I said, don't they have a map? He says, you're so smart. Guess who's the dispatcher tomorrow? And so I was in the office.
Right.
And for the first time in my life, I realized I didn't know this, is that the reason they sent me from here to get over to here, because it was a commercial job, and because I didn't have manuals, I was the only one, and my brother Richie trained to fix that system. And when I got done, there was a customer back here who was threatening to take us to the Better Business Bureau, which is the equivalent of going online and telling everybody throughout the whole world about how miserable we are because we had service issues there. So there was a reason that I did not know. By the same token, dispatchers do not know what a text life is. We're drilling a hole in a wall to run a flue pipe through there, and we think it's easy because it looks like sheetrock or whatever it's going to be. But sure enough, we hit reinforced concrete with bars in it. We're going to be here all day.
Right.
These are not X-ray glasses. So how would I know that? And so to Tommy's genius, he made dispatchers and CSRs ride with the techs a half a day so that they would see each other's world.
Mm.
And if you have the wherewithal to do this, this is really important. And I want to go back on another point. I recognize if you're a small company, the person answering the phone also has to do dispatching. And I get it. But when they are on the phone, they are following the CSR manual. A happy hostess in a restaurant, welcoming you in, doing all of the things, building sales momentum, and not repelling the call. When they hang up, magically they turned into a dispatcher. Who's going to do this? How do I prioritize that? Which text do I have? And handling the logistics, getting the information out. As you go and grow, though, money is always broken free by breaking them apart. Because if you're a CSR dispatcher, no matter how good you are, you're a CSR and you're a dispatcher, you already see the board is loaded up with calls. You're going to shortcut the system, if you follow what I'm saying. So as you get to, usually it's about 8 to 10 techs, you're already in the position where you should start thinking about breaking those positions. It does not mean that as a dispatcher, you wouldn't pick up a phone. It's just you're further down the depth chart. And as a CSR, it doesn't mean that you would not ever be in dispatch, because if dispatcher goes to lunch, you need to be cross-trained, which is what depth charts are all about. And guess what? If you have manuals, you can do that.
So I don't want to go too far off track, but I know I did want to touch on as we grow, as the businesses grow, which they do, and I know over the years, I've read through lots of different books and podcasts, and people have spoken on the show and so on and so forth, that you should always treat your manuals and your procedures as an evolution. They should always be improved because things change, right? Especially in the technology front.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you manage that?
It shouldn't be like a ping pong that's bouncing back and forth where you're always changing it constantly.
Right.
That's an over adjustment.
Yeah. Okay. So to talk about that, how does that look then?
I would say, unless it's something drastic, every 6 months to a year, you should be reviewing it. And the people that work in there should be making notes or highlighting it or digitally marking it, so that when we get around the table, and this goes to meetings, which is what you're leading into. Mm-hmm. When you have manuals, guess what you're doing in your meetings? You're going through the manuals, a page or two at a time, which is what I talk about in the program about how do you keep it in your culture. Mm-hmm. You don't want to be like a rubber ball you throw against the wall that comes bouncing back out. You want it to stick. And so this is one of the key things is, in meetings, we've had this discussion before, Matt. As a contractor, we're super crazy busy. So we think we have no time for meetings, and we are absolutely backwards on that. Now, I'm not talking about donut meetings, and we've had this discussion before, is where you go to a meeting, you talk about the same thing, we don't have anything else, everybody just uses a gripe set. No. Structured meetings are really different. So we only talk about, the CSR, and it's triggered around a page or two of the manual and making it come to life. Or the dispatcher making it come to life, or the technician coming to life. And as you can add more manuals in the program, then it's the accounts receivable, the accounts payable, the apprentice, and then the trade you do, plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, whether it's residential, commercial. I do even have install heavy manuals for that kind of things. There's field supervisors if you get up to that level. There's a manual for that. Mm-hmm. So you're pretty much getting the gist of it. There's as many as 31 manuals. Does every company need that? No. The one you start with is the 3 manuals. And when you're done, then you have the option to buy more manuals, like the ones we were talking about, the trades, and these other positions that you want to cover. Because what happens if your bookkeeper or accounts person gets sick?
Right.
Who's going to, trust me, people want to get paid.
Right.
So you better have cross-training, and you can't do that without manuals.
So let's talk a little bit, Al, about your journey of late and the evolution of, I suppose, the training programs that when you went into consulting, and then you went to running, teaching people in physical workshops how to do this. And then recently you've moved it into more of a digital format to make it more accessible. Let's talk about that journey a little bit.
Yeah. So when I left, I started my career in 2002, and I did a lot of speaking to get started.
Well, you're good at it.
I had a lot of contacts. Thank you. I was a little bit younger, but yeah, I did speaking on stage, spoke to a lot of groups, and then I made some connections with people who wanted to bring me in to do one-to-one. I did workshops, 2-day workshops, and then really I just got very busy with doing one-to-one exclusive work with contractors and all different contractors: plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical, roofing, kitchen cabinetry, a photographer. I mean, so you understand, a condo builder. So does manuals work? The answer is yes, and it works for everyone
Right.
of us.
I think it's important as well. Like, people think, oh, look, I mean, you would have heard this a lot more than me, but I've heard it a lot. No. My business is different.
Yeah. Well, I hear that even in the trades, and that's what's pretty funny to me. But because it just makes me laugh. I wrote manuals for the SEO company that I was working with.
Right.
SEO company. They had a 17-page checklist that they didn't know about. And which, first of all, if you have a 17-page checklist, my friends, rip it up or delete it. That's a very bad thing. But the point of it is no one could repeat this job until we created this manual. And really, so it affects every company. But these manuals are specific to contracting companies, and in particular, plumbing, heating, cooling, electrical. Those, because I have the trade manuals for those that are already there. But this really was my life. And then I was managing, up to about 10 companies with exclusive contracts, and people would pay me $100,000 a year, which was nice. And so, but I wanted to stay married, and Matt's met my wife. And so this also, the other thing that happened is my body has gotten wider and the seats on the planes have gotten narrow, which is a bad combination. And so I don't want to be out there. I still do. I work with some really big shops. I actually work with a garage door company. Funny of all things, a garage door company here in Phoenix.
I've had him on the show.
Tom, you introduced Tommy. He's great. And Keith is an electrical company with multiple shops. Which, if you have multiple shops and you don't have manuals and systems, you're done. You are in a world of hurt. Yeah. You're in a world of hurt. But so they have this, and this is so got to this point, Matt, where I did workshops again, and it was about these manuals, because of the 7 powers, they're all important. But if I can only start with one, and I can only grab you by the chin, operating power, manuals is the most important thing.
Yeah. Okay.
And I think it's just a case of, that's why I focused on it. So when I spoke to Matt about this, a couple of years ago, he goes, Al, I don't care how important the manuals are. You think my guys are going to get on a plane to fly to you, to work a couple of days and be disconnected, then go back and then, do this stuff? It's just too hard and too expensive. I said, I hear you, Matt, but that's what I'm doing. It got to the point where I realized that, it's the time has come to put these online. And so that's what this program is. And more of my stuff is going to be moving there. But this is the centerpiece of it. It is the Build Your Operating Manuals online program. And it was a lot. I'll tell you, right, this is not to butter up. This is really what Matt told me years ago had to happen. And myself, and he knows Helena, who's my right-hand person. We said, But, ultimately, the truth came down. He's absolutely right. And people are often running with it. And, starting to change themselves and their company, which is a really pleasant thing.
So it's a great evolution, and it's really, I think, put like your teachings, Al, in the hands of people that, formerly might not have been able to get there, whether that means because they're in a different country or a different state or whatever it is. But anyway, it's now accessible to anyone. And you've designed it in a really clever format online there. So for any of the listeners out there that are keen to get hold of this, I mean, it's more of a methodology, isn't it, Al? Really, it's like a...
Yeah, it's what I think I've shared already. The words on the page are really important, and the digital device. So not discounting that and the way it was constructed, but it's really the know-how of what I learned after I went through this process and have been learning again and again. I just keep getting smarter over the 17 years of doing this, that you have to go step by step in the process. And what I did in this program, and I was very pleased, is that I took what I did one-to-one and what I did in workshops, and I brought it to video. And it was kind of share a story. A guy had worked with me at the workshop, and he said to me, I knew he was struggling. So I said, you know what, just go through the class, do this online video course and training. I know you have the manuals already, and see if that'll help. And so he calls Alina and me up, and he says, no offense, Al. He says, but I like watching your videos way more than you. So I said, okay, well, now that my feelings are hurt, why is that? And he said, it's I know you don't do it intentionally, but you just have so much knowledge. And in a one-to-one or even in workshop, there's just so much flowing at you. But in the videos, I can watch that video as many times as I want. And they're short. These are not long, long videos. Because if I wouldn't watch it, I don't expect you to watch it. And so I have watched myself, which is always, Matt will sometimes can be painful. But I watch the videos and I'm very pleased because it is what I wanted, which is I take you up the mountain step by step, and you're on my hip to get this, so you get what you paid for and more by doing it. And I start with these 3 key manuals. So why not all the manuals was a question that came up to me. I thought it was a great idea to give you all these manuals. And then one day, contractor, because contractors speak plain English, contractor said, it's like giving me a boat anchor and sinking me to the ocean, bottom of the ocean. It was not a good thing because it was just too much. So he said, what's the most impactful? And I said, the triangle of communication, CSR, dispatcher, and tech. So by editing those the way that I show you, by rolling them out the way I show you, by getting them in the culture the way I show you, by tying it to the org chart, then when you complete, you can go back in and get more manuals and repeat the same process. It helps with cash flow, which is one of the things, and it also helps in time management and getting it done. Because my goal is for you, as it was for myself, and has been from the day I hung out the shingle and said, I'm in business to help other contractors, is for you to get it done. And I know this is going to sound, but Matt is whole, and he knows that I'm telling. I have suffered, and it was not for other people came into my life. I'm telling you, it was a killing experience. So I know what you go through, and I'm telling you, it doesn't have to be. And one of the things, when you go to my website or even the page that that he's going to be sharing with you, I take a lot of time to make sure that I have contractors talking to you about what has happened to you in this process, to them, because I want you to understand that this is doable, and what is doesn't always have to be. So that's what I want to take. Sorry for going serious on you, but it means that to me.
So for the SiteShed listeners, you've got a lovely discount there that you've thrown into the mix. Is that right?
That's correct. Yep. So the program, there's a 200, but you have to use the link that Matt will be providing you. So use that link, and there'll be a discount of $250 off for this initial program. So that's pretty much what it needs to do. And my apologies to my friends in Australia. I recognize it's in US dollars, just like the people in Canada who are already doing the program. I said, I'm not in charge of currency, and I apologize. But I'm going to tell you this comes to the point. And actually, Tommy was the one that, Tommy being the garage door guy.
Right.
He goes, what do people not understand? I said, what do you mean, Tom? He goes, manuals don't cost you money. I said, well, I know it paid me back. He goes, no. Yes, you always focus on Al's. I could put another tech on the road that could get me $300,000. All true. I could get somebody can do that. But what you're not thinking about is if I have a bunch of techs and the customer service rep is trained right, and I convert that call and I build sales momentum, and my dispatcher, because my drive time is killing me and my billable hours are a problem, if they can maximize that, and if my techs follow the things that we talk about, and do the job right and minimize callbacks, and then of course move on to the trade manuals afterwards, and they know how to do the job right, these manuals do not cost you money. They make you money. And I shared with Matt, I sent him over a different guy, Jim Harper up in Vail, who does plumbing, heating, cooling, and residential and commercial. And he just, there just were not enough hours in a day for this guy. And, he calls me up all the time about how much it's changed his life. He's a great guy, Jim. And, I'm very honored that I was able to share it with him.
So if you guys that are listening or watching, I'll post that link, of course, so you guys can get that discount. But if you're in the space where you're thinking, okay, Matt, I've been listening to Matt talk about this stuff for far too long, I'm ready to take the first step. I cannot recommend enough getting involved in this program, because no one does it better than Al. And trust me, I've been looking. So by all means, go and check that out. Definitely get on their mailing list anyway, because there's always great content coming out. Al, is there anything you wanted to close off on before we wrapped up this podcast?
No, I just think, and I do share some time management techniques as well, because in the program we have some stuff for you as well to help you out on the time management thing. Because when we have three things in the universe to balance as contractors: our time, our energy, and our money. You can borrow money, you can take a partner on, you can go to the bank and do a lot of things. And your energy is something you have to be cautious, but time is it. And if you don't learn how to manage time right, it manages you, and you will not like it.
Mm. Yeah, and it's no easy. I mean, this is certainly not specific to trades. This is relevant across the board. It's
Absolutely.
It's a grind. I mean, I don't know. Do you talk much about project management and things like that within the program?
This is the other program. This is the time management thing. But I talk about, how to take control of your calendar and some other things that are in this Build Your Operating Manual program. So it's got some good things in there to help you. This is, again, I'm doing my best to be a tour guide here and come up the trail with me. And I recognize where the stumbling blocks are.
Yeah.
There's some good things. I always talk about the story with Jeff, who came to the workshop, just didn't get stuff done. And how he had to unplug and how he had a 2-hour time block. So I've got some neat tricks for you.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay, cool. Well, guys, I hope that was useful. I thoroughly encourage you to, if you're watching the video here, I'll post the link just below right there. If you're listening to this, then I will definitely have the link in the outro and the intro. Al, if anyone has any questions, I'm guessing they can reach out and you'll come back to answer those as always.
Yeah. So I always am happy to be. Email is the best way, which is Al, Apple, Louis at the number 7 powercontractor.com. No spaces, no hyphens. Al at 7powercontractor.com. Just drop me an email and I will respond.
Nice. Beautiful. Okay. Well, mate, thanks very much for you guys out there. I hope you get a lot out of that course. I know you will. I've seen it and it is dripping gold. So, Al, thank you for putting that within the reach of the masses, and we look forward to hearing everyone's feedback.
Thank you for nodding and pushing me and throwing me down a set of steps till I got it done.
Okay. All right. That's a wrap.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Toolbox Talks. If you're liking what you hear, then you can head across to thesiteshed.com where you can join our community by signing up to our Toolbox Talks. You'll get sent a weekly notification, which is basically a highlight of everything that we've spoken about during that week, along with any other industry news that may be relevant or specific to the trades. If you're enjoying the show, you can head across to iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud, where you can leave us a review. That would be fantastic, and all the reviews get read out in the show. Likewise, if you have any friends or colleagues that you think would benefit from the show and the episodes that we create, then please go ahead and share it with them.